The Treasure Seekers by Thea Stilton. Read aloud permission given by Scholastic. A Scottish Dream Come True. Colette placed the last clip in her fur and smiled in satisfaction. "There," she squeaked, "I'm ready." She went to join the Thea sisters in the room they had been sharing for a few weeks. But instead of finding her four best friends, she found only one. "Where are the others?" Colette asked Violet, who was happily stuffing a backpack with a blanket, a travel pillow, and a camera. "Nikki is feeding the horses before we go," Violet explained. "Pam is in the kitchen making sandwiches, and Paulina—" Before Violet could finish her sentence, the door flew open and Paulina entered, a map in her paws. "For our picnic, Miss Kerr suggested we take the trail into the woods a few miles from here," she announced, excitedly pointing to a spot on the map. "She says there is a peaceful clearing with a lovely stream running through it." "That sounds beautiful," Colette said, sighing wistfully. She looked out the window at the bright emerald green grass and the sheep, cows, and ponies that Nikki was feeding for the last time. "Oh, I'm so sad to be leaving Scotland already. This vacation went by too quickly." "You're right, Coco," Paulina agreed, "but it's not over yet." "Exactly," Violet added. "Let's enjoy the days we have left." The friends smiled as they reflected on the wonderful vacation. It wasn't very long ago that Colette, Paulina, Violet, Nikki, and Pamela were at Mouseford Academy, thinking about how they would spend their summer, when Paulina found an ad that seemed perfect for them. "Do you want a different kind of vacation? Scotland is waiting. Stay at an organic farm for free. In exchange, you'll help us take care of the garden and the animals." The Thea sisters were excited by the idea of visiting a beautiful farm where they would learn to take care of sheep and horses. They immediately got in touch with Miss Kerr, the owner of the farm, when they booked their flight from Whale Island, and in a short time found themselves driving through the green countryside on their way to Miss Kerr's farm. And that's how their very special summer started. When the Thea sisters arrived at the farm, Miss Kerr greeted them warmly and made them feel right at home with some of her delicious shortbread Scottish butter cookies. And Cranchin, a traditional dessert made with raspberries, oats, honey, and cream. Taking care of the garden and animals was of course work, but it was also fun. Nikki in particular had really taken to two of the ponies on the farm. Plus, the five friends had rented an SUV and visited the surrounding areas, where they explored breathtaking waterfalls, caves, bays, and castles. The vacation had gone by in a flash, and they were almost at the end. Miss Kerr had suggested that the mouselets rest and visit all the things they hadn't seen before they had to leave. So the next day the Thea sisters had organized a relaxing picnic, and now they couldn't wait for their adventure. "We have enough sandwiches for a week!" Pam exclaimed, as she returned from the kitchen holding a basket of food, napkins, and utensils. "I've loaded the backpacks and with everything we need," Violet said. "Great!" Colette exclaimed. "Now let's get Nikki and go. This will be the best picnic ever." A sudden storm. Half an hour later, Pam parked the SUV in a small parking lot at the edge of the woods. "Here we are!" Paulina exclaimed happily. "The place Miss Kerr suggested is about a 10-minute hike down this trail." Pam looked at the trailhead confused. It looks like 3 different paths begin here," she pointed out. "Did Miss Kerr mention which trail to take?" Paulina scratched her head. "I don't know," she said, perplexed. On the map, there's only one. Maybe they all lead to the same place. Maybe, or maybe not, Colette said wisely. We'd better check. At that moment, a hiker approached, and Colette flagged the mouse down. Excuse me, Colette asked, politely pointing to the map. But could you tell me what path we should take to get here? The hiker barely glanced at the map. Instead, she just looked up at the sky and shook her head. It's not worth it, she said. Colette was surprised. According to Miss Kerr, the spot sounded like the perfect place. But why not? Colette replied. We heard it was a nice place for a picnic. Suit yourself, the rodent replied briskly. Take the first path on the left. Colette went back to her friends to tell them the mouse's answer. How strange, Violet said. Maybe she just meant that there were better places around here, Nikki said with a shrug. Well, there's only one way to find out, Pamela said confidently. And the 5 friends started down the trail. A short while later, they emerged from the woods in a beautiful clearing with a spectacular view of the mountains. This place seems absolutely perfect to me, Colette exclaimed happily. There are so many flowers, and look at this sparkling clear stream. I don't know what that mouse was talking about. How beautiful. Let's set up here. What lovely butterflies. Yes, but we must be careful not to fall in, Pam warned. The water will be cold. Paulina laid the blankets on the grass, and the 5 friends could finally relax and enjoy the Marvamouse view. Come on, let's take a photo, Colette proposed, as she finished the last piece of cake that Miss Kerr had packed them. Oh, I think we've taken enough photos on this trip, Violet said as she lay back on the blanket and closed her eyes. Right now, I just want to relax. But a moment later, Violet sat straight up on the blanket. Hey, she squeaked. Who splashed me with water? Nikki looked worriedly at the sky, which had suddenly gone dark. It wasn't us, V, she explained, pointing to the gray clouds thickening above them. It looks like it's about to storm. She had barely finished her sentence when there was a clap of thunder, and thick sheets of rain began to fall. Let's go! Paulina yelled, quickly stuffing the blankets in the backpacks. She left one blanket out, so she and her friends could shelter themselves from the rain. Hurry, Nikki said. Let's get back to the car. But suddenly she stopped. A single hiker had been walking near the stream, and Nikki saw him slip on the rocks. I'll be right back, she called to her friends. Then she pulled her hood over her head and scampered to the shore. There, a blonde mouse was sitting on the ground, holding his paw. What happened? Nikki asked. I hurt my ankle, he replied, his snout twisting in pain. Come on, lean on me, Nikki said as she helped him up. Ow, he squeaked. I don't think I can walk. But we have to get out of this storm, Nikki insisted. Suddenly, Nikki remembered seeing a small stone building near the shore, not too far away. It was definitely closer than the car. She motioned to the Thea sisters to follow her there. A few minutes later, their fur soaked, Nikki and the hiker managed to make their way to the building's covered porch. Thanks, the ratlet said to Nikki. Without your help, I never would have managed. My name is Boyd, and I live nearby. I went out for a walk, and when the storm came, I tried to hurry, but I slipped on the rocks. A soft voice behind them interrupted. You've all been thoughtless. Unexpected help. Colette turned toward the door. She had heard that voice before. It was the mouse that she had asked for directions. The mouse looked at them sternly and repeated herself. "You've all been thoughtless." It was clear a big storm was coming. Then she turned to Colette. "I tried to warn you." I'm sorry, I didn't understand you," Colette said apologetically. "But we're not used to the weather here, so we didn't see the signs of the storm." Achoo! Nicky sneezed suddenly. "It's my fault," Boyd chimed in. "They stayed back to help me." The mouse noticed that Boyd was balancing on one paw to keep the injured one off the ground. Then, without another squeak, she gestured for them all to come inside. "You'll catch a cold out here, especially you two," she said to Nicky and Boyd. The group entered the house, which was incredibly warm and dry, thanks to the fire burning in a large stone fireplace. Their host headed to a corner of the big room, which was furnished with a rustic wood furniture. Then she took a blanket out of a chest and gave it to Nicky, before leading Boyd to a chair to examine his ankle. Nicky wrapped herself in the blanket as her friend stood next to her. Paulina began to pet the cute dog that was curled up on the thick carpet. "Your ankle's swelling up quite a bit," their host said. "A doctor should take a look at it." I should go home so my parents can take me to the hospital," Boyd said. "I don't live far from here, but I don't know how I'm going to get there." "That's no problem," Pam exclaimed. "My friends and I will go to get our car, and we'll take you home right away." "But we won't all fit," Paulina pointed out. "If you take Boyd, one of us will have to stay here." Their host decided for them. "She stays here," she declared, pointing to a shivering Nicky, who was still wrapped in a blanket. "I'll get her some dry clothes and a cup of hot tea." "I'll stay here with her," Colette said. So Pam, Paulina, and Violet hurried to get the SUV so they could take Boyd home. Meanwhile, Nicky put on the dry clothes the woman had brought her. Wide, short pants, a pair of knee-length socks, and an argyle sweater. "I wore these when I was your age," the older mouse said, smiling. "They're a little outdated, but they suit you perfectly." "Oh, they're perfect, Miss Beatrice," she said, introducing herself. Then she pointed to a bench in front of the crackling fireplace and added, "Have a seat. I will make you some tea." Then she disappeared into the kitchen. "Coco, what do you think of my new look?" Nicky joked, spinning around and posing like she was about to have her picture taken. "Colette?" Her friend hadn't heard her, because she was busy admiring the biggest decoration in the room. A tapestry that was hanging over the fireplace. The embroidery featured a huge, lush tree with deep roots, surrounded by a frame of leaves and flowers. "This is such a beautiful design," Nicky exclaimed. "Yes, it's really lovely," Colette said in admiration. "The leaves, trunk, and flowers are stitched in such detail." "And the design is so balanced," Nicky said. She leaned close to the tapestry to get a better look. At that moment, Beatrice entered the room, holding a tray with a teapot and teacups. "What are you doing?" she asked briskly. The Legend of the Tapestry. Nicky stepped away from the tapestry. "We were just admiring this beautiful piece," Colette replied tentatively. Beatrice was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. "I'm sorry. I did not mean to be rude," she said. "I'm afraid I'm not used to having guests. As you may have guessed, this isn't just a simple tapestry." At that moment, Pam, Paulina, and Violet knocked on the door and entered. They had returned after taking Boyd home. "Make yourselves comfortable," Beatrice said. "Thank you, but we don't want to disturb you too much," Violet replied politely. Beatrice shook her head. "You're not disturbing me," she said, "and it's better if you wait here for a bit. The storm will stop soon." "But how do you know that?" Pam asked, surprised. The older mouse smiled. "Oh, I've always lived in this valley," she explained. "I know every sign of nature in this corner of the world. I just have to look at the color of the sky and the shape of the clouds, or smell the scent of the woods to know if it will rain or if it will be a cold winter. Nature talks to us, and I've been able to understand since I was a little mouselet. I use my senses. I look, I listen, I feel, and I smell." Colette nodded and looked more carefully around the room. She could see that it was full of signs of nature. Vases of plants and greenery, pine cones decorating the stone fireplace, and of course, the tapestry she had admired earlier. As she sat next to Nicky, the front of the fireplace, happily sipping a cup of tea, Colette gathered her courage and asked Beatrice the question that was on her mind. Can you tell us more about this fascinating tapestry?" she asked. Beatrice nodded. She sat in a rocking chair, petting her dog, who sat curled at her feet. "The tapestry belonged to my great-aunt," Beatrice began. "So it's a family heirloom," Nicky remarked. "Oh, it's much more than that," Beatrice replied. "This tapestry hides a true mystery." "A mystery?" Pam asked, intrigued. "What kind of mystery?" "Well, you noticed the writing around the edges, right?" Beatrice noted. "It's a secret message that my great-aunt left to my grandmother Petra many years ago. No one has ever managed to decipher its true meaning." A clap of thunder rang out suddenly, and the 5 friends jumped. "It's a message that speaks of petals of midnight and a mysterious hidden alabaster garden," Beatrice continued. "Supposedly, a precious, ancient treasure is buried there." "So it's like a fable?" Paulina asked. "It's a legend invented to intrigue the listener." "Yes, that's what everyone thinks," Beatrice replied, slowly sipping her tea. "Well, almost everyone." At that moment, a ray of sunshine came through the window. The dark clouds in the sky had disappeared, and the rain had stopped, leaving behind sparkling beads of water that glistened like jewels on the pine cones. Before the mouselets could say anything more, Beatrice stood up. "It's best if you go right now," she said abruptly. "It will start raining again soon." The Thea sisters were a bit surprised, but they nodded and quickly stood up. "Thank you again," Nicky said, as they bid Beatrice farewell. "We'll be back tomorrow to return your clothes." The 5 friends were quiet during their trip back to the farm. When they were about halfway there, the skies opened up and a light rain began to fall, just as Beatrice had predicted.